Hi everyone, it's Rax. The question that I get by far the most, the last real remaining question in Season 5 is, Rax, why does your Lightning Spear Sorcerer hit so much harder than mine? So I'm going to show you a very quick guide, 0 to hero, to show you how to start with essentially absolutely nothing with Lightning Spear and how to make it absolute full power, and some tips and tricks that you might have missed that might make a huge difference in your damage. So let's start at the very beginning with the build guide itself from Northwar. Shout out to Northwar. And on all of the endgame guides, there is this thing called the endgame gear and skill progression. And this is going to have the different variants for you. So he says, why are you here? He recommends leveling up as either Firewall or Chain Lightning or Fireball, as they're stronger. Get some basic gear, and then switch over to this build. It's not exactly the best with absolutely nothing. But if you really want to start with it right away, you can. And here's the variant. Here is the setup. The Paragon board is above. So there should be no variance between you and me here. Once you progress through and you get to the end game and then you get your Mythic uniques, there are always different setups right here that you can follow along through. And at the end, you're going to hit this variant that I'm using. We're going to have the same Paragon board. We're going to have exactly the same skills. So there's going to be no variance here, but use these to move through until you have everything. Okay? So here I am on my garbage sorcerer. I purposely farmed a bunch of garbage gear that's very low power, that's not exactly the right thing. No greater affixes, and we're going to put it all on. So the very first step is, of course, go into your guide and then put on all of the correct aspects. For example, the most important thing is to put Splintering Energy on your weapon. Okay, we got to get all the right powers on there. Make sure they match exactly with whatever progression you're in. If you're in the Mythic unique thing, then do that one. If you're in the leveling to 100 thing, you don't have great gear, then copy those. So that would be the very first step. Then you need to re-roll your gear. So int and crit are godly. You could go with percent damage, but most people would take a life roll here. I'd re-roll this to life, for example. On these boots, life and movement speed are fine for now. Impairment reduction sucks. I would roll this off for either int, or maybe I would even take armor, because remember, your armor needs to be 9230. If your armor is way below 9230, and you're wondering why you die all the time, that's why. So you can put skulls in your gear, you can throw an armor roll on your pieces of gear until you have everything solved. Similarly, sorcerers are really good about solving this, but you need to have your maxed resistances here. So if you don't have those, you can pick up some resistances on your starter gear. But just go through, put on the right powers, re-roll some stuff, add some gems to your gear, and then we're ready to begin our journey. So the very first thing that we need to do is Nightmare Dungeons. We go over and we craft some Nightmare Dungeon keys, whichever one are the highest ones that you can do comfortably. Once you get really above this 41 range, all of the gear that you're going to get is going to be level 925, which is really what we're looking for here. That's the highest eye level of gear. And the reason why you need to do Nightmare Dungeons is it's going to drop you your glyphs for your gear. So you need to find all of these and socket it into your Paragon boards. Unfortunately, the glyphs don't drop in the Infernal Hordes. Then the Nightmare Dungeons, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. The Nightmare Dungeons will also give you the XP for the glyphs. The first priority is leveling them all to 15. If you've got them all to 15, you're doing great. So Nightmare Dungeons to get the glyphs and get them to 15. We also need to immediately temper our gear. So we're going to go over here and we're going to put all of the stuff that we want. How do we know what we want? You just go into the thing and mouse over it. You can see at the bottom the little anvil below the int, crit, and life. We want critical strike damage and chance for a second lightning spear. Okay, no problem. So we go over here, Conjuration, chance for a Lightning Spear. Now we brick it. Hydras have 2 heads. Don't want that. Chance for a Lightning Spear. Sometimes dreams come true. Now we want critical strike damage, and we're going to take that. Okay, we hit the miracle. That never happens. Now, one thing to understand about this particular build, about the scaling of it, is if you read the main thing, Splintering Energy is what does our damage. So when we crit with Lightning Spear, it arcs out and does 5,000 damage. That actually doesn't sound like that much. But this damage is increased by your critical strike damage bonus. Okay, so now we know that we need to crit, and we know that we need critical strike as much as we possibly can. And Lightning Spear itself has a cooldown on it. It's like 17 seconds currently. Of course, it's 17. That number follows me everywhere. So that is our main goal here. That is the difference between my sorcerer and yours. My sorcerer has 100% chance to crit. My sorcerer has a 6-second Lightning Spear cooldown instead of 7. And my critical strike damage is 2,198. So that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for very low cooldown on Lightning Spear. We're aiming for 100 crit, which is actually 85 crit, because if you read modifiers, casting Lightning Spear spawns an additional Lightning Spear and increases the crit by 15%, so we only need to get to 85. And then we want the critical strike damage to be around 2,200. It can probably get to around 2,300 at the maximum. And if you're looking there and you're taking a little peek at if you're taking a peek at your Lightning Spear character, and you're seeing that your critical strike damage is 1,200, 1,300, and you can't get your crit to 85 to make it 100, this is why I'm doing so much more damage than you. So, after we do the Nightmare Dungeons, and after we've went through and tempered all of our gear, now we need to actually acquire the pieces for our gear to actually make it work. We need a Fractured Winterglass, we need to get a Tibault, we need to get an Essus, and we need to get Mythic Uniques. Definitely going to start by gathering up some boss mats so we can go get all this stuff. So when you're doing your Nightmare Dungeons, you're going to get Distilled Fear. This is going to let you spawn Beast in Ice, which is going to be very helpful. Then we're going to go to Helltide. When you go to Helltide, there is the Blood Maiden. And the Blood Maiden is going to give you blood for Zir, which drops the Fractured Winterglass. So it's very important to go here, spend all of your materials, keep slaying the Blood Maiden. Hopefully there are other people there, and acquire the Exquisite blood. And then another thing you could do is when you're in Helltide, you can open all the chests for the Living Steel. So we can go fight Grigore. That's good. And then to fight Varshan, the Malignant Hearts and the other body parts kind of drop everywhere. They drop off of world bosses. They drop in Legion events. They drop sometimes in events in Nightmare Dungeons. Remember, when you get body parts that are not Malignant Hearts, come down here to the Alchemist and transmute them into the correct thing. So I can pick up 33 hearts right here and 1 heart right here. You only need hearts anymore to summon them. Okay, and you can see I can summon Varshan 1,000,000 times. So go out there and farm some boss mats. Then we are going to go to the Max Roll Discord, because Diablo 4 doesn't have any social systems, but there is a group finder coming in the expansion. So we're finally getting that. So on any guide, click the Discord thing. Boink. And it's going to open. It is going to open the Max Roll Discord here. And we're going to go down to looking for group. You can see there's tons of people chatting all the time here. We're doing looking for 3 more Tormented Zero rotation, add this person. You can find friends instantly to share the boss mats with. And by this point in the season, a lot of people should be really strong, so you shouldn't worry about failing it. If I'm online streaming and your group can't kill it, just message me, Rax, we're stuck. I'll come in there and one-shot it for you to make sure that you get your stuff. Not a big deal. There's lots of people in the community who will help you. But that's how you find a group to share your mats with. Go to the Maxwell Discord, go to the Looking for Group channel, say, hey, this is my account name. I have this many blood. I have this many living seal, whatever it is. Another thing is you will need to find stones. And you can find stones very easily in the progression. So in Zimbabwe down here, there is a progression thing through the season. It's called like the season journey. The season journey is something separate. This is called the reputation. But as you get through here, it will give you stones, which are required to summon your first couple of tormented bosses. So go here. Okay, I've already leveled up. I don't know how. I think I'm like 200 chests beyond the max. Okay, but as you progress through, it's going to give you chests that are going to give you. They're going to give you your Stygian stones so you can summon the Uber bosses. Okay, so that's where you're going to get that. So now that you've done some of the bosses, hopefully you get any fractured Winterglass ever. Now some people are going to say, Rax, I did it 10 times, I didn't get one. Well, you got to go again. I'm sorry. You got to go back to Helltide, go back to the Blood Maiden, stop by my stream. I give away Winterglasses all the time. You got to get one of them. It's not a rare drop. You shouldn't have to do too many. Yes, sometimes you do 10 of them in a row and you don't get one. But sometimes the RNG is brutal. You just got to get any of them to start out with. And then now you're going to be cooking once you have fractured Winterglass. And now when you're doing those tormented bosses, you also want to pick up your Mythic uniques. So the Mythic uniques have it. Look, I just got a fractured Winterglass out of that chest, by the way. That's kind of interesting. Wow, what timing. The Mythic uniques can have an equal chance to drop off of any of these bosses. And here's how I think about Mythic uniques. So the end game needs a Shako, which is a Harlequin Crest, and a Tyreal's Might, right? So if you did not know, there is a mechanic. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to salvage this one. My bad. By the way, that one was 0.1 on Conjuration. You're trying to not get 0.1, so that was kind of a bad one, but you could use it if you didn't have another one. So when you are playing through, when you get to the end of this reputation chain down here, you're going to get a Resplendent Spark. You're also going to get one from your first Tormented kill. You're also going to get one for your first Lilith kill, which I just made a video on how to kill her. And now you're going to have 3. So you can farm 3 fairly easily. And now you need 1 more, because when you have 4 Resplendent Sparks, you can craft any Mythic unique in the game. So if you go over here and you transmute, if you have 4 of them and 50 million gold, you can make any of these. So this build needs a Shako and a Tyreals. So let's say you're farming, and again, sometimes you can kill 50 bosses in a row and not get a Mythic unique. It's a 7.3% chance every time you kill a tormented boss. So you should get one in. Not too many, but sometimes, RNG is RNG. But if you get a Shako or a Tyreals off the bat, that's the dream. Because then you can put it on straight away, and then you have to find any of the other ones, and then you find anything, it doesn't matter, Andariels, you could salvage it. When you salvage it, you get 1 more spark. Now you have 4, the 3 we talked about, and 1 more, and then you could craft the other thing that you need, the Tyreals or the Shako. So that's the way. That's the smartest long-term play you could make. When you get your first Mythic, if it's a good one that you need, put it on and wait for any other one, salvage it, and then craft the other one. Or if the opposite happens, if you get a worthless one first, like Ahavarion Spear of Lysander or something, again, you can salvage it, and now you have 4 sparks. But I would wait for crafting. Don't craft the Shako or the Tyreals right away. The Shako is better. If you want to craft one or the other, you can. But it's better to wait to see if you can get one or the other to drop. Maybe in 10 more kills, you're going to get the Shako to drop. Oh, now you can craft your Tyreals. or maybe the Tyreals drops. Now you can craft your Shako. You know what I mean? So if you can wait, but if you're just out of mats and you're over it and you're sad, then craft the Shako first. But it pays to wait there a little bit. Okay, so at this point, we have some basic gear on. We farmed some boss mats. We did our nightmare dungeons. We have our tempering done, our re-rolling done. We have some basic powers on. At this point, you should certainly be strong enough to do T6 Infernal Hordes, which are somewhere over here. So you take the Infernal Horde keys, which are just laying on the ground. You can use the Abyssal Scrolls to level them up here. Okay. And the reason why you want to do at least T6 is T6 in the materials chest will give you Masterworking Materials. Now we can start really pumping up our gear and masterworking it up. You could start off by just getting all of it to level 12 and not resetting it at all, and then fine-tuning your gear later is a good strategy. If you can do T7, or if you're really strong and even T8, that's even better for getting more masterworking materials early. Some people in my stream today were doing the pit, and I said, the pit? Don't do the pit. It's way better to do the Infernal Hordes. Now, when you do the Infernal Hordes in the higher tiers, it's going to give you a ton of Neath Iron, which is the highest level masterworking material, the Neath Iron. But you can actually trade it down into the lower ones at the Alchemist. So you can go here and pick up, I don't know, 500 Ingolith, and then you can transfer that down to the Obdusite. Okay? So if you have only Neath Iron, but you need the lower level ones to level up your gear, feel free to trade it down. Now, here is a very important tip and trick about masterworking. So you might be sitting here thinking, okay, I have 88 critical strike damage as a roll, and I have 130 critical strike damage as a temper. And I remember from the guide, from the splintering aspect, when I roll it down there, that critical strike damage is very important. So when I'm going through and masterworking this stuff, I would be very happy if I masterwork either the critical strike damage roll or if I masterwork the critical strike damage. And that is kind of true, but really actually not true. Let me tell you why. So on your staff, if you have int, life, and then let's say you have a greater affix. You have a greater affix of critical strike damage. Then here you have the critical strike damage temper. And then you have the Lightning Spear temper. What happens if you masterwork them and you hit the triple crit in critical strike damage? You would get plus 270 critical strike damage. What would happen if you did the same thing into the temper? Do you know? I believe the number is 374 critical strike damage. Now, why? Why? And by the way, the greater affix here is a very high value. But why did this one end up 104 critical strike damage higher than the other roll? Well, that's because the increase is based upon the base of the affix. So the greater affix rolls higher than the base, but the masterworking is increasing it by the base number. Here, this is increasing it by the base number, which is much higher. That's why this becomes 374, and it's a massive difference. So for example, if you're going through and you're masterworking and you got a couple of rolls in that 88 critical strike damage, that's very different from me, where I have 2 of the rolls into the critical strike damage down below. It's very different. It's a huge difference. So in a lot of these, a lot of people are not understanding how I'm getting these super high rolls. That's because I have a triple legendary greater affix into critical strike damage. And the same thing in the gloves. I have a triple greater affix roll into critical strike damage. This is why I'm getting way higher scaling off of my splintering than you are. So that's something to keep in mind. And it's honestly very curious as to why Blizzard designed it that way. I'm not sure why they didn't base it off of the actual affix value roll. I still don't understand that. I don't know. Maybe they plan to change it, but that's the way that it works. Okay, so now that's it. That's the entire game. Once you masterwork everything correctly, the game is over, and now you've reached essentially maximum power on your sorcerer. So now let me walk through and explain to you one more time what I'm thinking when I'm looking at the gear here. By the way, of course, another obvious step would be after you get all of your basic gear on, now you're looking for the same gear with greater affixes. So on the Shako, it's incredible. You want to masterwork the cooldown reduction, as you've seen me do here. You want the greater affix on the cooldown reduction. It gives you 20% damage reduction. The 4 ranks to all skills actually really doesn't help you that much. Because again, look, we're playing Lightning Spear. I don't even put points into Lightning Spear. I only have the 1 point. 4 is from the Shako. Again, remember, everything comes from splintering energy, which is why the critical strike damage is so important. Before I forget, by the way, I like to use either Elixir of Precision or Elixir of Advantage. If you use Elixir of Precision, then after I attack and get all of my buffs up, you can see my critical strike chance right here is 71, but when it's all said and done, it's 87. And then with the 15% Lightning Spear crit, should be up to 100. And here our critical strike damage is 2,198, which is why we were just murdering everything. Tyreal's Might. The damage reduction and the maximum all res is super, super valuable. Again, maximum all res is different than all res. Instead of this being capped at 70, it's now capped at 84.6. And this is why pretty much nothing can kill you in addition to the massive damage reduction. It does give you a Divine Barrage. That's okay, but that's not going to do any damage compared to your splintering energy. Now, this is a beautiful topic, the gloves. In the guide, there is a calculator for whether you should use Fists of Fate or not. And I can let you follow the steps. I could show you a demo, but I have a summary for you anyway. Are Fists of Fate good? You go to the dummy in Kyovashad, follow the steps, and look at the numbers and see if your conjurations are high enough from Conjuration Mastery for your Fists of Fate to be better. I can summarize it for you very easily. For 99% of players, Fists of Fate is worse than these legendary gloves. Your Fists of Fate have to roll so incredibly well at the top stats. They essentially have to have greater affixes at the top and roll extremely well. If they aren't good enough, if they aren't that good, which 99% of you will not have them rolled that well, you need to just use a regular legendary pair of gloves. In addition to getting stats like attack speed, crit, and some 2 very lovely temperings, you also get 30% increased damage to vulnerable while you have a barrier. Both of these are always up, so it's just essentially 30% multiplicative damage. It's crazy, crazy strong. A lot of people I see walking around with these very, very bad Fists of Fate, they're really not that good. And this might make a huge difference. If you have a really nice pair of gloves like this could make all the difference in the world. Try swapping it out and see how much stronger you are. On Tibault's Will, we have the 19% increased damage while unstoppable. You can also switch it out for a legendary power later on. I like Tibault's Will because it's very, very strong. Now, here's the interesting part about this. We want the multiplicative damage while unstoppable, but the damage reduction while unstoppable is borderline useless for us. Now, why is that? Why is the damage good for us while it's unstoppable, but the damage reduction isn't? Well, that's because, well, how do you get unstoppable here? Well, first of all, you can get it from Flame Shield, okay? But that doesn't help you because while you have Flame Shield, you're immune. So you don't take any damage anyway. So me getting damage reduction while I'm immune to damage does actually nothing for me, okay? But there is another source of unstoppable, and that's for teleport, but that's only for like a moment. So for a moment while you're teleporting, you get this damage reduction, and then it doesn't apply. So it's like, okay, well then, why would we take these at all? Because if you read the power, it says while you're unstoppable and for 5 seconds after. So you can actually keep up the multiplicative damage always by either teleporting or using Flame Shield, but you can't keep up the damage reduction while unstoppable in any way that actually helps you. That's why I was looking for a greater affix on either the all stats or the life. The all stats, they just buffed intelligence. Every 8 gives you 1% damage. So 103 all stats is actually nothing to sneeze at. It's pretty good. So that's my thoughts on the Tibaults, and that same logic is why we're socketing these with intelligence gems instead of rubies for life. If you're dying, then put in rubies instead. Essus is very good, another thing that's very commonly misunderstood. So we want the greater affix on the critical strike damage. Again, critical strike damage is literally everything for the build. Your critical strike chance is increased by 37% of your movement speed bonus. So then what I hear people say all the time is, yeah, what you want to do is evade all the time so you get 125% movement speed. Why would you do that? They say, well, Rex, because it caps your movement speed, right? I go, no, your movement speed is already capped. The reason why your movement speed is already capped when you're fighting is because of Conjuration Mastery. Conjuration Mastery says you get 12% movement speed for each active conjuration. I can pretty comfortably spawn without Fists of Fate 20 conjurations. So that's already capping my movement speed for me instantly. The only thing that evading is doing is wasting global cooldowns for frozen orbs or lightning spears to do more damage or reset them. So, no, you shouldn't have to evade at all. So that's Essus, kind of misunderstood there, and pump the critical strike damage here. The staff is pretty self-explanatory. You want a greater affix in critical strike damage. You want the other greater affix if you can get it into the intelligence. Then people always ask, Rax, what about percent damage instead of life? Percent damage sucks. I heard some sorcerers come in and say, I put percent damage on everything. That's not good? No. And the reason why percent damage is not good is percent damage is additive. So what that means is when you have all these different rolls of percent damage, it adds those numbers together into a big pool, and then that added number turns into a multiplier for your damage. That is way worse than having the different rolls be separate multipliers. Almost everything in the game in terms of stats is additive. So that's why usually you only chase the stats that explicitly do something else for your build, whether it's via a legendary Paragon node, or whether your aspect literally says it will do more damage if you stack this stat. So no, percent damage is not good here. Maximum life is actually pretty huge here because my life pool is so low. So 2,500 life on this staff is a massive, massive buff to my survivability. But if I got whatever it is, 60% damage, it would be a minuscule damage increase. That's why I go for life instead of percent damage. The Fractured Winterglass. So here, the important thing is that your conjuration cooldowns are not 0.1. If they're 0.1, then it's barely going to reset your Lightning Spear, and you're going to be sad. If you can get a greater affix on that, or you can masterwork that, it's very good. Conjuration Mastery is also extremely strong because of all the buffs that it gives you. It gives you multiplicative damage. It gives you movement speed to max your Essus. It gives you mana regeneration. I never run out of mana. People ask me, should I use Starless Skies? Absolutely not. No, because this is significantly better. And then the power at the bottom is also pretty important. Try to get a high roll there. The main thing is try to get a conjuration cooldown higher than 0.1. And I'm talking 0.1 when the Winterglass is not masterwork. Like the first one that we got from the chest, that one was bad. So on to the next ring. It's always attack, crit, crit. Exactly the same as the gloves. Attack speed, crit, crit. Lightning Spear cooldown reduction is massive with critical strike damage. Notice how I put the tempers into the critical strike damage on the masterwork, not on the stat that's going to give you way more damage. And then finally, we have Talrashas. Now, the most important thing is at the bottom, you want to get the number as close to 20% as possible because we cycle through 3 elements, lightning and fire and ice. So that's going to give us 3 instances of 20% multiplicative damage. I see some people walking around with these 10% Talrashas. Sure, if you're first starting, that's fine, but this is completely unacceptable. And sometimes people will have like a 12 Talrasha with a greater affix on the lucky hit chance or something. Be like, look at this. No, that needs to go straight into the trash can. You need the power at the bottom to be very, very close to 20. Then the next most important thing is you want to try to hit the greater affix on the cooldown reduction, because bringing back Lightning Spear will increase your damage significantly. So that's why I took the 18.5, took a little bit of a hit there, 1.5%, in order to hit the greater affix on the CDR, and then I got lucky and I triple masterworked it. So that is kind of the summary there. And so when you have this full power, I didn't show this in yesterday's video, but I'll show you right now. The damage that you can get here when you get to 100 crit and 2,200 critical strike damage is completely insane. In the Lilith video, people were saying, wow, Rax threw a frozen orb and hit Lilith for 25% of her health. Right, but when you actually, I took off my ultimate, I took off the Lightning Spear, yada, yada, yada. But when you reach full power, the fight becomes instantly trivialized because you're going to see the amount of damage that we're going to do here when we're actually trying. So let's hop in here and see what happens. Ultimate on, Lightning Spear on. Let's get in here. Okay. Gone. You see how crazy this becomes? And what I'm doing here is I hold down Frozen Orb. I hold down 4, and then I tap Lightning Spear. That way I'm always vomiting Frozen Orbs to reset, and then my Lightning Spear comes back up. So same thing, I apply all my buffs. Okay, ultimate Lightning Spear, and she's instantly dead. And then it's just a function of running around and dodging the orbs at this point, and you don't have to do anything. You can keep attacking her to build up your stagger, just to show you the level of power that you can get to. So, I guess as we're running around here dodging the fireballs, what are the differences between my character and yours? Well, mine should have a 100% chance to crit, 87.2 plus 15 is over 100, 2200 critical strike damage. I have attack speed on both of these rolls. I didn't use a garbage Fists of Fate. I used the legendary gloves. That will give you a huge damage increase. If you're just using a garbage Fist of Fate, that's not good for you. My Tibault is a 19 with the correct greater affix. My Talrasha is an 18.5 with a greater affix on the CDR. All my stuff is masterworked into the tempering of critical strike damage. I have the Mythic uniques. This is the difference. So now, hopefully, you can go through this video and look at your character and be like, all right, let me compare this to what I'm seeing from Rax here. Let me compare to what these numbers look like. And of course, I'm armor capped, which is why I don't have anything in any sockets here. And I have this much, and I have 16,000 life. This is why they can't kill me. And now maybe you could make a plan. You might be able to say, okay, well, my Fists of Fate suck. I'm going to look for gloves like this. I'm going to get the right tempers, and then I'm going to try to at least double masterwork it. Work your way up here. Start climbing the critical strike damage ladder. And I have a feeling that you're going to be able to come into Lilith right here and just completely demolish her very soon. Let me know if you have lingering questions down below, or if you want, I stream every single day. People pop into my stream all the time asking me questions. I can help you. And if you're desperately looking for some of these items and you can't find them, I literally give away 10 of all these items every single day as I farm them because I'm playing with the community. I will help you. All right? Thank you.